At the end of this past spring, we here in the West finally were able to get our hands on a lovely Blu-ray copy of what is known as the Mobile Suit Gundam Movie Trilogy. This is a very good thing. If you've never heard of Gundam before, well, first of all, I would recommend finding a better place to live, maybe some new friends, and some other life changes to never have such a glaring issue occur to you ever again. But let's say that you've heard of it, you just don't know much about it. This is a much less grievous offense. Mika! Gundam is an anime franchise that began in 1979. Throughout its history, it's been filled with high-stakes battles, despairs, political intricacies, and people wanting to kill one another.
I'll kill you.
Oh well! The general subject matter of Gundam has always had this feeling of intensity. But since this has been an ongoing thing from the very beginning, over time the franchise has started to wear a face that comes off as self-important, convoluted, and esoteric, which isn't exactly great when you're talking about one of the most influential titles of anime history. If you want to just take a dip to see what all the hubbub is about, but you aren't sure whether or not you want to proceed further than just one show, the recent Iron-Blooded Orphans will do you just fine. That said, if you want to properly tackle Gundam, really, there's only one place to start. At the beginning. Gundam's first series of 43 episodes aired in 1979 with the original Mobile Suit Gundam. You might wonder why 43 specifically, and while the story behind that is interesting, it's far too long to do it justice here, so I'll just TLDR it with the fact that the original series was cancelled before it really got any traction with a modern audience, and it wasn't until its popularity started to soar after the cancellation that the series following it were able to be made. Part of that, though, was the creation of 3 films, a trilogy that condensed the show's major events into a format that was more effective at spreading the Gundam gospel, as it were. Despite the trilogy's existence, though, the original TV series is still remembered fondly by many fans and survived through the availability on international DVD and Blu-ray releases. However, with the current anime landscape, in which consuming a 1 to 2 core show is what's considered standard, getting someone to watch 43 episodes of Gundam only to tell them that what they just sat through was just the first piece of a rather large puzzle, maybe a tad unreasonable. Alternatively, these 3 films are approximately 140 minutes each, totaling up to 7 hours. Now, I realize I'm not normally one to recommend recap films. In fact, there are many instances where I find recap films completely pointless, to the point where it doesn't even save you a bunch of time. Looking at you, Madoka. But to put all of this into perspective, the total amount of time that it would take to complete the original run of the 1979 Gundam TV would be over 17 hours. This story is only the beginning of what is referred to as the Universal Century timeline. After that, you have Zeta Gundam, which has 50 episodes, then Gundam Double Zeta, which is another 47 episodes before this initial story arc is concluded in the movie Mobile Suit Gundam: Char's Counterattack. Only then is where things get complicated. Universal Century continued to sustain itself in the form of OVA series that take place across the entire timeline, War in the Pocket, Stardust Memory, and the excellent 8th MS team, among others. However, with more and more entries into the existing continuity, the accessibility of the franchise as a whole decreases, thus making it harder for new fans to break in. Sound like a familiar problem? To counter this, Bandai and Studio Sunrise began producing Gundam shows that take place in alternate universes to create fresh starts and adopt the anime trends of the era, hoping that people could buy into those before eventually approaching Universal Century, of course, starting with the original Mobile Suit Gundam in all of its outdated glory. But here's the thing. Watching these compilation films is not at all like reading a Gundam history textbook, nor does it butcher the original TV series that it was based from. Even though many anime have been influenced by it since, for the most part they lack that raw sting that Gundam had when it was first starting out. It was alone in a sea of relative capers about borderline magical machines that fought cartoony aliens with virtually irrelevant consequences, something that would later be referred to as Super Robot. Now, these anime were definitely fun in their own right, but back in the day when those shows were a dime a dozen, Gundam's realism made the distinction of an entirely new subgenre, real robot. I'm not only recommending you to watch these films over the TV show due to issues of length, it's also because, in my opinion, the show contains a lot of things that hold it back. For starters, it's relatively slow, which denies the story the sense of urgency that war dramas benefit from. Some would argue that even these films are a tad slow, but comparatively, the trilogy has a much swifter stride. With characters treated as humans first and warriors second, the story's deeper priority is the inherent goodness that humans are capable of.
人は変わってゆくわ。私たちと同じよ。
そうだよ。ララの言う通りだ。
アムロは本当に信じた。
信じるさ。君ともこうして分かり合えたんだ。人はいつか時間さえ支配することができるさ。
アムロ、時が見える。
If there is an enemy here, it's the faceless war itself, with its vicious cycle of ignorance and highly disenfranchising consequences.
I called this show a cartoon for little kids, but I was wrong!
After all my years in the industry, I've never seen a show with such respect for human feelings.
It deserves to be praised for its humanity.
It touched my heart and made me feel like a child.
After you're done here, you could continue through the sequel series, Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta, Char's Counterattack, and maybe even watch some of the OVA series, like Gundam Unicorn, which is essentially a 7-part tribute to the original Gundam story arc. But if you didn't like or don't want to follow this particular conflict, you still have many great options. While Universal Century's various OVA series are technically standalone stories, they really do require the pre-digested context of the original trilogy, as its events are by far the most important. For instance, Gundam 0080, War in the Pocket, is told from a young boy's perspective as he gets involved with an enemy pilot. It does the old war is bad moral so much better than other anime, and it accomplishes all of this in just 6 episodes. Yet, you wouldn't get a feel for it without already knowing the political situation that was set up in the original. And if you wanted something a little more auspicious, then Gundam the Origin functions as a prequel to the trilogy, but again, similar to Fate Zero in relation to the Fate franchise, without prior knowledge of the eventual outcome, the tragic irony unique to Origin wouldn't be as effective, as you have no connection to these beloved characters back when they still had peace in their lives. Just recently was a series called Gundam Thunderbolt, which is just a battle that takes place concurrently with the original Gundam, but it is such a stylistic marvel. Trust me, you'll need that solid foundation of knowledge from the trilogy when diving headfirst into all of this chaos and jazz. So if Gundam is interesting, intriguing, or at all piques your interest, you really do owe it to yourself to take an afternoon and have a gander at where it all started. Watching the Gundam Trilogy films is another example of something I recommend to do, not because it's a particularly amazing piece of media on its own. I mean, come on, it's late 70s animation and pacing. There's a lot of improvement that can be done here, even by the same animators. Shout out to Ichiro Tano. But I recommend it because the start of Gundam is really something that's too important to ignore. The influence of Gundam since its inception is undeniable. How it's left its mark in anime sci-fi lexicon, helping to influence other shows such as Macross to Evangelion and Bebop in the 90s, modern anime would not be the same without the original Gundam. Not just, the franchise of Gundam itself, but the industry as a whole. Gundam's disenfranchising nature of war, written by people who grew up in the post-World War II nuclear era, pushed other anime to have similar themes, bringing very serious consequences into these silly cartoons. It's something that I've always pointed to about anime that sets it apart from other animation styles and mindsets, particularly Western ones. And Gundam isn't necessarily where that started, but it's most definitely a contributing factor. And unlike starting with the TV show, which is bogged down with narrative baggage and being too awkward to be relatable, these films are succinct and still have power despite their age. Even if you end up disliking them, just remember that there's bound to be something great to see in spite of them. you will have experienced one of the biggest steps for progressive anime with your own eyes, and you can use that context as a gateway to so many other fantastic stories, or even reevaluate some of the great anime that you've already seen. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it. There will be some links down in the description where you can purchase the Gundam Trilogy, as well as some streaming links to other Gundam series that I recommend. As always, I want to thank my patrons for supporting my videos, as without them, they would not be possible. More specifically, I would like to thank Siri Yamako, Victor Ekmark, Joshua Garcia, Hedrul Leon, Bing Theo, Robert Chumzai, and Calhoun Boy for being especially awesome. And that's it for me. Until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.